because God saw everything they thought was hidden. Hello, I'm Melanie Elaine, woman of the bees, hemodialysis patient for 9 years, ready to bring truth into the rest of a tired soul. In today's podcast is where I finally just say aloud what God has been doing for me in the dark. Today's episode is named Anointed and Accounted For. This is the place where I honor protection, the correction, and the covering that happened long before anyone else knew that I needed it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not here to drag anybody, definitely not here to rehearse old wounds. I'm here to testify because the God who anointed me is the same God who accounted for every harm, every betrayal, every quiet cruelty done behind my back. All the actions taken in secret that were supposed to silence me. But God saw it, God handled it, and God kept me. I'm speaking today as someone who has walked between worlds countless times and still continues to. Someone who has lived close enough to death to know what real protection feels like. You learn to thank God, not just for the miracles people can see with their eyes in the flesh, but for the interventions nobody witnessed. This is to God, who defended me without an audience of approval. So let's begin. Let's talk about what it means to be anointed and accounted for. There were seasons where I didn't know how I was still standing. Not emotionally, not spiritually, but physically. Maybe you know what, not even physically. Not physically. Dialysis had me between worlds and continues to do so. My body and is still very tired. Spirit stretched so thin, and the people around me have not always been gentle, kind, or honest. Some people took advantage of my vulnerability. Some people mistook my softness for weakness. Some people may have thought my silence meant I didn't see what they were doing. But you know who saw it? God. And while I was fighting for my life, God was fighting battles I didn't even know were happening. There were moments where I felt abandoned, but God was already rearranging the room, already exposing intentions. I didn't know then, but I was being protected in real time. The spiritual check. Let me tell you something about divine accountability. God doesn't just come for his anointed, he corrects what comes against them. Not with vengeance, not with spectacle, but with alignment. People think being checked means punishment, but sometimes it means being stopped, being redirected, being prevented from causing more harm or death. And I've watched God do that quietly, cleanly, with the utmost divine precision, without lifting a finger, without me lifting a finger. That's why I'm thinking God out loud now. Not like God needs, the thank you, but because God handled things so privately that the things that were set to destroy me were ceasing to continue. The lesson. Now, if you're still here, still listening, maybe you've been there too. Someone lied on you, someone betrayed you, someone tried to dim your spirit, someone tried to take advantage of you in your utmost vulnerable moment. Someone thought God wasn't watching. Want to know the truth about all of this? And what I've learned? You don't have to expose anybody. You don't. That's the beauty in this. You don't have to fight battles that aren't yours to hold. When you are anointed, you are also accounted for. Let me say that again. When you are anointed, you are also accounted for. God keeps track, God keeps watch, and God keeps receipts. And God handles that. Now, let's step into a vulnerable experience. This is a real life testimony. You might want to get some popcorn for this one. So, this is a recent mishap I want to share that gives more perspective on when someone, or rather something, tries to take advantage of a vulnerable state. Well, at least my vulnerable state. This was a moment where the veil thinned and something tried me, and God said no. I was in the hospital in Dallas, admitted for low hemoglobin and dangerously high potassium. They gave me a medication, to bring the potassium down, and something else to try to counterbalance that, which didn't make sense because I wasn't diabetic. And you only use this for if someone's diabetic and you're bringing their potassium down, because if you don't, the sugar levels would rise, or the glucose levels would rise. So, but because I'm not diabetic, it did the opposite, and it dropped my blood sugar so fast. 10 minutes after my nurse left the room, I felt myself slipping. I passed out. Came to just long enough to call for help. No one answered. Passed out again. I woke up the second time and I was drenched in sweat, slightly like confused as to like what just happened, crying and still very much alone in the hospital room. Eventually, the same night nurse came in when I was able to call again and get somebody and tell them that I passed out. They checked my blood sugar. It was 25. That number could have taken my life. So he brought me some orange juice, to raise my blood sugar, and some IV like glucose to help raise my blood sugar faster than what the orange juice could do. But even as I was crying, he was smiling. No words of apology or panic or concern, just smiling at me. Something about that smile, it unsettled me in a way I still can't fully explain. It wasn't comforting, it wasn't kind, it felt wrong. Spiritually wrong. In many traditions, an inappropriate smile during someone's suffering is seen as a sign of a malevolent or trickster presence, a spirit that delights in vulnerability, a shadow that glides in the room or slides into the room when you're closest to the edge. And that's exactly how it felt. Like I was looking at someone who wasn't just a person, but a presence, a tester, a gatekeeper, even. The next morning, I spoke with the charge nurse, not to assign him, to me again the next night, because I was there for a few days. She looked confused, which startled me even more. She didn't even know who he was. He wasn't on schedule. He was a floating nurse that night, there, then gone. That phantom like quality stayed with me. Some people believe that in moments of extreme vulnerability, when the body is weak and the spirit is hovering between worlds, we encounter beings or energies attached to people that test our will to stay, test our purpose, test our anointing. Here's the part that mattered most, though. I woke up, right? By divine intervention, I woke up. My spirit fought its way back into my body. God said, "Not my anointed." Despite the danger, the confusion, I survived an encounter that could have taken me, physically and spiritually. And in many cultures, surviving a moment like that, a moment with a smiling, nameless presence, is seen as a sign of spiritual protection, a sign of a strong life force, a sign that your purpose is not finished. The hospital system failed me. We're not wrong on that part. But God did it. Whatever that presence was, okay, A person may be acting out of darkness, a spiritual hitchhiker, a gatekeeper, whatever. It did not win because God accounted for me. God called me back. So, when I say God handles things in the dark, I'm not speaking in a metaphor. I'm speaking from lived experience as someone who has been tested and returned. And I want you to hear this. If you are still here, you are here on purpose. If you survived what should have taken you, you survived because God said, not this one, not today, not mine. Before we close, I'd like to speak this over you, but feel free to exit if you don't feel the need to have prayer in this moment. You can always come back, and I welcome you to. May you trust the God who sees what you can't. May you rest in the protection that doesn't need to be proven. May you release the need to defend yourself. May you remember that being anointed means being accounted for. May you be like the bee, small but powerful, guided by instinct older than language, carrying sweetness even after walking through dark places. May you return to your hive, your body, your spirit, your truth, knowing that God has already cleared the path. The same God who protects the hive protects his anointed. May your survival be the buzzing reminder of God. Until next time.